The Merry Pranksters, Chapter 12, Episode 2. I don't know what's going to happen here, Hank tells me, but I wouldn't have dragged you all the way out here if I thought we had a choice. The headlights bouncing along the gravel road leading up to the old cottage slice through the dust like dueling lightsabers that send a not-so-subtle message to trespassers. Fuck right off. The cobblestone house was so tiny you felt like you could see all the way around to the other side, and when we stepped onto the wooden porch, 1,000 paper cranes flew through the dark air. Before Hank knocked on the tiny red door, I was fishing for eye contact. I could have used a little reassurance that we were going to make it out of this alive, but Hank hasn't got any to give. As the red door creaked slowly open, a striking Asian man wearing a light gray suit stood formally perpendicular to the doorway. On one hand, folded before him, was a missing ring finger, clipped off at the knuckle, and on the other hand, he wore a silver, diamond-studded yokai demon ring. He had long, flowing hair that fell gently upon his shoulders and sharp eyes that gave nothing away. No two people would use the same adjective to describe the man. While one might use a word such as godlike, another could simply describe him as dapper. After looking the two of us over with a polite amount of contempt, he said a pair of words in a cruel language, not meant to be understood, but meant to be felt. Hank was polite when he responded, as if he not only understood it was a question that the God-man had asked, but that he somehow knew the answer to it as well. Without looking at me, Hank explains, "He's cool. He's my accountant. I need him here," in short staccato statements. He didn't say this in a cute way, not like a flirtatious father would introduce his boy to a hot waitress, but in a way that says, "Try me." After being instructed, we both removed our shoes, and I follow Hank past the Japanese henchman into the house. The way the crisp air conditioning hits you as you pass through the threshold feels like stepping through the wardrobe into Narnia. Enter the Dragon is playing silently on a Toshiba 4K Ultra television set that no one is watching, and the soft red brushstrokes of an original Murakami oil painting immediately catch your eye. Each intentional stroke leads the eye around the grand living room from one painting to the next, and a series of works lining the wall depicting the Book of Five Rings. Leading us through the labyrinth of dark hallways, we pass a small bonsai tree and then a giant Komodo dragon idly snatching flies out of thin air. It was not Hank who screamed out in terror when 3 savage pit bulls came skidding around the corner, drooling and snarling fiercely like a Pavlovian nightmare. But even he could not hold back a grimace when the 3 beasts laid down obediently the instant their strict master snapped at them in Japanese that had me rubbing the polish off my lion skull ring. Back when it appeared that Hank had some understanding of what the pretty Chinaman had said at the door, I dismissed it as a fluke. He was gauging body language, I thought, no more. It's not like he's secretly some Asian code talker or anything. Now here I am being asked to believe that these 3 pit bulls, whimpering at his shiny heel, are fluent in Japanese as well. Maybe a Shih Tzu or an Akita, but surely not a pit bull. I assumed they spoke Spanish, but now I just feel like I'm being gaslit. The triple beam was the first thing I noticed, balancing like justice on a steel table in the center of a small, icy room. Aside from the humming glow of a green hydroponics lamp, the room was dim with no windows and no other means of escape. Hank stood subtly, counting the large steel safes and gun racks lining the 4 cement walls who, in their bare silence, were all demanding order. Standing behind the table was a tall man, pale but still quite doughty, carefully tapping at the scale with his finger until it had reached perfect equilibrium. He looked up as if only to lock eyes with Hank. Hiding under a simple white wife-beater were mostly religiously themed body tattoos, and over it, Ian the Irish drug lord, the man we've all heard so little about, wore a Heckler & Koch P30 vertical roto shoulder holster concealing a nickel-plated Glock 30. He broke his gaze to remove a large brick of cocaine from the scale and stuffed it into a black military duffel bag resting on the cold table. Without breaking his focus on the triple beam scale, he called us both lads and told us to take a seat in the empty room. Hank allowed his leather duffel bag to drop to the ground with a loud, echoing thud that cut through the facade of the quaint cottage tucked deep in the forest. Carefully watching as the muscle-bound Irishman slowly raised his eye, not to meet mine or Hank's, but past us to meet the eye of his bodyguard for a reaction. When the Asian bodyguard offered a nod, so subtle that it could have easily gone undetected, Ian returned the nod in a way that could have been confused with a bow. He called the henchman Chacho before craning his thick, veiny neck until the cracking sound reverberated throughout the cement room. Settling his gaze firmly on Hank, who had never broken eye contact, Ian began speaking in an accent so thick and indecipherable I couldn't believe it had ties to the English language. He broke his intense lock on Hank abruptly, turning to look over at me. "Well, oil beef hooked," he said as I stood absolutely petrified. After I continued to stand there, speechless and confused, he added, "He's a hard man to get a hold of, ain't he?" Without pausing or begging for his attention, Hank said in a measured tone, "Well, here I am." The only trace of an emotion to be detected by either man was the slightest tightening of his jaw and the beginnings of an amused grin on Ian's face. When Hank picked up the leather bag, walked it over to the steel table, and unzipped it, both men held a casual stare. Hank's bloody knuckles did not go unnoticed. They both knew exactly what was in the bag and that it was not $1 short. The smirk that began before Hank started talking stood still as he spoke about the run-in with Ian's lackeys earlier in the day. Ian's eyebrows only began to inch their way into an arched position after Hank explained that it didn't end too well for them. There was something one of the men said, the one with the scar running down his face, that caused Hank to drive all the way out here today. Hank clenched his scabbing fist and asked the question he came here to get the answer to. If Hank was expecting to gauge a spontaneous admission by Ian's reaction to his blunt question, he didn't get it. Not an increased pulse rate, not even a curling of the lip. Only briefly raising his eyes when Hank asked him directly if he killed Gonzo, did Ian state, "No, mate, I sure didn't," as casually as if he were asked if he was the second shooter in the grassy knoll. Ian broke off contact only to steal a quick glance in the direction of Chacho. Without so much as a flinching muscle on his bronze face, the beautiful Asian man did not even nod this time. The man in the gray suit simply lowered his eyelids as if acquiescing to a forgiveness that only he could grant. Ian let a pause hang in the thick Arctic air, and when he was ready, he admitted, "The lads, they have been known to conduct their duties with a wee bit too much enthusiasm, haven't they?" Without hesitation, he offered his condolences on Gonzo's death to Hank and to me. Ian even looked to Chacho as if to offer it on his behalf as well. He said, though he didn't need to, "Chacho and I, right? We actually caught your last gig at Cooper's. Too bad things went a wee bit sideways. You lot are quite good, aren't you?" The way he framed that statement could be taken as a compliment if he was being sincere. If not, a veiled threat.